Well, hello. If you're seeing this, it's an absolute miracle. It wasn't by accident. It probably was. My name's Vivian, and I'm going to try to do a series called Family Tales, T-E-L-L-S instead of T-A-L-E-S, because it sounds like T-A-L-E-S, but it's all true. And so I've got lots of different stories, and today I'm going to tell you the story about my parents, my mom in particular, playing hide and go seek for money. I grew up in the Mill Village in Alabama City, and it was a community where they built houses so the families that lived there could work in the mills. And so it wasn't a super rich community. It was a pretty poor community, but we didn't know we were poor. But anyway, one year, my mother and the neighbors, and then everybody around us were coming over to the house, and they would have parties, and they would have dances, and they all got together and they decided they were going to play hide and go seek for money. Well, they all put $5 a piece in. Now, this was when I was a little girl, like 8 or 9 years old, and $5 was a lot of money back then. Anyway, you could hide on the whole and over the whole neighborhood. When it was like the whole block, you had a whole block you could hide on anywhere, and they would draw names, and two people would be it, and generally one person would stay on the base to try to keep anybody from being able to run to the base, and the other one would look for people. I can't remember how they divvied up the money, but if you didn't get found, then you got money. And if you got found, of course, you lost everything. Well, we lived in where we lived. We had some neighbors right next to us. They were on the other side of the back alley. There was this dirt road that was between our neighbor's house and our house, and it was the Mostellas lived next door to us, and they were good friends with my mom and dad, and they had 2 children. But anyway, it was starting to get dark, and everybody decided they were going to put their money in. And just as dark started to hit, I told my sister, I said, "Come on, I want to see what's going to happen. Let's get on top of the garage." And she said, "No, we'll get in trouble. We'll get a whooping." I said, "Oh, we're going to get a whooping anyway. We might as well do it." Because we always we're going to get in trouble. We was always getting a whooping, so I wasn't too much worried about it because I was going to get a whooping anyway. So we went over, and we had this old garage, and it was a 1-car garage. Really, it was more of a lean-to, and it had a tin roof on it, and the tin roof was starting to rust. And Mom, if she ever caught us, we were climbing up a cottonwood tree that was right next to it. Anyway, if she ever caught us get up there, she'd whoop us. Anyway, so we climbed up onto the roof, and I told my sister, "Be careful now, make sure you step where the nails are, because if we stepped anywhere where there wasn't some kind of support, and there wasn't that many supports in the roof, then you just fall right through." And that's why Mama didn't want us up there anyway. So we got up on top of the roof, and we laid down up there, and all of a sudden we heard something, turn around and looked, and Ronnie Mostella, our neighbor's husband, was climbing the light pole out on the back alley. There were several light poles run down through there. Well, telephone poles. There was one light pole. And it was a light pole that was on their yard that had a light on it, and he was climbing that. And he climbed to the top of that pole and sat on top of that pole. But while he was climbing up, all of a sudden we heard Mama and Eloisa fussing. Mama said, "I know where we're going to go hide. Let's go hide on the other side of the ditch." We had this 5-foot ditch. It ran through the yard on the back side, and on the other side of that ditch, we'd let a sagebrush and a briar patch grow up next to the pecan tree we had. We had a big pecan tree on the other side. Anyway, they'd let it grow up on that side of the yard, on that side of the ditch, because they hadn't drug the lawnmower around there to mow it. But anyway, Mama and Marlene said, Eloise Mostell says, let's go on over there. If we tunnel up in them briars, ain't nobody going to look in there. Well, we can watch the base, and we will know when they're gone away from the base. So they started digging up in there, and all of a sudden we heard somebody at the base hollered, ready or not, here we come. And so Mama said, shh, come on. And so they dug up a little further, and they was sitting there, and all of a sudden Mama said, I got to pee. I got to pee bad. Well, Marlene said, that's all right. Keep calling Eloise Marlene. Eloise said, just tunnel over a little bit and pee over there, and it'll be all right. And so Mama said, well, started moving over, and Eloise says, I got to have a cigarette. Mama said, you better not let them see you like that cigarette, and you better keep the end of the cigarette cover, because if they find us, we'll lose our money. So Eloise lit her cigarette, and she did that, and she throwed the match down. And when she throwed that match down, it didn't go out in the sagebrush. I don't know if you know anything about sagebrush, but man, it's just flammable. And that sagebrush went, and I mean, it just flew up. And Mama had her pants down, and she was just a-peeing, and that sagebrush went up, and she started screaming because the fire was all around them, and it was blowing. And Mama was trying to get her pants down. Now, my mama is bigger than I am. And you can see, if you look, I am not a little woman. My mama's bigger than I was. And she started trying to get out, and she was screaming and hollering, trying to pull her pants up. She's pulling her pants up, and she's trying to, and there's just all kind of briars just cutting her butt up, and she's got a big old white butt coming out of there, and Eloise Mostell's husband, Ronnie Mostell, was sitting on top, and so he saw it all, and he heard it all. Anyway, they come out of there, and Mama was bleeding and cussing, and I think it took her a couple of days to get over it, where she wasn't mad at Eloise for lighting them bushes on fire, and they lost their money.